Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to what is potentially the most ambitious episode of Kasterborous to date. Yes, we've done live episodes and we've interviewed notable people from Doctor Who, which was quite, it's quite exciting, but also quite intimidating. I mean, going back a few years, Graham Harper, lovely fellow, but big name and therefore a bit on the intimidating side. So this week, it is a bit different. And the reason for that is that I'm bringing in 6 people that you've already heard over the past few weeks talking about Doctor Who Series 15. So we've got Gareth Kavanagh. We've got Philip Bates. We've got Rick Lundeen. We have got James Whittington. And we've also got James McLean. All of these people have recorded pieces for me that I'm going to edit intelligently, he says, into this podcast. So it's a discussion about Doctor Who Series 15, featuring lots of people who have seen it all and one person who's only seen one episode. That's me. Okay, before we get into the nuts and bolts of this podcast, I just want to remind you about our Patreon. Things have changed slightly over there recently due to some revisions as to how Patreon handles sign-ups. So, up until recently, it was possible to sign up new members totally free with Patreon, but recent changes to the platform's terms and conditions are limiting how we can bring listeners along in our never-ending quest to talk about Doctor Who and other things. So we've had to make some changes to how the membership tiers are organised. If you're an existing member, you're invited to our special Founders tier. Moving forward, we're using a new membership tier, single membership tier for just £4.99 a month, called Patrons with a K. Obviously, there's no K in Patrons. That's the joke. Head over to patreon.com/Kasterborous to check the full details of that, because I don't want to bore you with it in this podcast because there's lots to get through. I also need to tell you about a new project that I am working on, which I've already kicked off, in fact, kasterborous.substack.com. Kasterborous.co.uk isn't really garnering the right amount of attention for my purposes, I don't think. It is very much grounded in the blog style of website, and it isn't really developing in the way that I want it to. And because it's not developing in the right way, it means I'm not able to bring enough attention to the podcast. So I'm moving my attention to this new Substack, which will feature new and old articles and unpublished articles about Doctor Who and other TV shows and movies and fictions and whatever you like, really. Basically, if it's a Gen X-y sort of nostalgia, or it's something from my childhood and a bit more personal to me, then I will probably be writing about it there. I may invite people to help me to contribute from time to time as well, but that really depends on a few other factors. But it isn't purely about Doctor Who, just like our podcast is no longer purely about Doctor Who. It's about lots of things, and that's something I want to take forward, because the benefit about Substack is if you subscribe, then you get the alerts on the app, or you get the article straight into your inbox and you can read it at leisure. There's no need to just go looking for a website, which really no one wants to do anymore unless they're attempting to fulfill a very specific task, look for guide on how to do something, check for a review of a product or a movie or a TV show, etc. So yeah, that's very much, we're into the Substack zone. Okay. So, a quick bit about me in season 15. I think it's fair to say I didn't engage with the previous series of Doctor Who at all, but I thought I'd give this one a better chance. So I tuned in to the Robot Revolution, and I thought it was pretty good. I quite enjoyed it. I think it had a bit of a Smith and Jones vibe to it in terms of the intro and bringing the Doctor and Belinda together. And I think a few other people have said it has a bit of a Doctor Who magazine or Doctor Who monthly feel to it, and you can imagine it all done in John Ridgway illustrations. it did feel very authentically Doctor Who from a particular place and era, and that's fine, because I think, when you've got a big budget, you've got the CG budget and everything, make things big and bright and colourful, then why not do it? On the other hand, you've got that budget to make things bright and beautiful and colourful, and you've got an alien city with robots in. I mean, there's a missed opportunity to do a Dalek city there, isn't there? But that's a conversation for another time, perhaps. Now, Doctor Who Series 15 for me coincided with some dance competitions. Regular listeners may recall that my son dances competitively. Also, my two daughters do as well. And, getting the timings right and the lineup. And yes, we have catch-up TV, but then again, as me and James have discussed on numerous occasions over the years, there's an increasing amount of things to watch. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to catch up with the rest of Doctor Who Season 15. And I've got to be honest, if the other 5 episodes before the finale were as good as I'm told they were, I think I might have been slightly annoyed by the end of the run based on what I've heard and our guests today. So I want to kick off this conversation with some thoughts about the outgoing Doctor. Here's Philip Bates.
I feel sorry for Ncuti Gatwa. I think his stories generally have let him down. He, I think, deserved to at least face the Daleks or something during his time. Obviously, his time has been somewhat truncated, and it actually feels like we don't really know this Doctor. Last series, I think I liked his Doctor a bit more. This season, I wasn't quite so sure. They leaned into him just being shooty a bit too much for my liking, not the Doctor. I also think Varada Sethu was let down. She started off very promising in the Robot Revolution, but then her character just fizzled. There was nothing particularly strong about her in the later episodes, and it felt like she was hardly seen. We didn't really get to know her. Obviously, she wasn't in Lucky Day much at all. And Story in the Engine, she wasn't in that much. Her raison d'etre seemed to go. Russell has gone from someone who delights in writing about the companions' family situations to one who basically ignores it. I'm not sure if we even met her dad. We don't really know her family situation whatsoever, which is a big shame that her agency is gone.
Rick Lundin also had some interesting thoughts about Varada's role as Belinda.
Belinda started out to be a tough, good, solid, honest character. And then by the end of the season, or the middle of the season, she was sidelined. And by the end of the season, she was now confined to motherhood. Motherhood's wonderful, but she never expressed a want for that. So it just feels like they parried her. Same thing that happened to Perry and King Yakanos.
Right, let's bring in James McLean.
Yes, I liked the series. I thought it was good. I think, for me, the final 2-parter was the weakest. The first part was unsatisfying, although probably more satisfying when attached to the second part. But the second part felt flabby. You could feel the rewrites all the way through it, where it's been changed at the last minute to accommodate changes in the show. But at the same time, bit with Jodie was good, and I think his regeneration was excellent. It was in the right tone for the character, and it felt fresh and dynamic.
What about for a more overall look at the series? James Whittington.
The Well was the only thing which came close to being decent. This was mainly thanks to a barnstorming performance from guest actress Rose Ayling-Ellis. This was a follow-up to the classic story Midnight. It's just a shame they ruined the memory of the original by taking away the suffocating atmosphere and added loads of CGI. Sometimes bigger isn't always better. Budgets are just too big as well. It's just too much of a spectacle. The original run never needed lavish effects. All it needed was a decent lead and good, solid stories.
Okay, the only person we haven't heard from so far is Gareth Kavanagh. So I think that's a good time to move on to some discussion about the finale.
It just felt a bit of a mess, a bit of a letdown. I mean, Omega was Kronos in the end, the Eater of Time. I mean, that's okay. I think that's fine. I mean, it was a shame. I was looking forward to big fruity performances and glittery cloaks and black holes and wailing, and we kind of got the thing out of the relic. I mean, that's okay. Omega was set up as the big bad, but was dispatched within 10 minutes, and I think it was an odd ending. I mean, depending on what you read, I guess RTD didn't get the ending he wanted because he'd written for a third season of Shooty and then had to go back and rewrite it, and the quest for Poppy and all that sort of stuff.
I wonder whether in a few years' time we'll consider any of these episodes to be classics. Philip?
I'm not sure anything particularly has been a classic this season, whereas last season I would say Boom is probably a classic. Many would argue 73 Yards, which I think was okay. Yeah, pretty good.
Look, is there a good episode that maybe stood out for you?
For me, I very much enjoyed Dot and Bubble. Very unusual. This series, perhaps The Well and Lucky Day. Lucky Day was interesting in that I didn't really miss the Doctor, but when he did turn up, he was particularly strong. We saw a different sort of side to him that wasn't really explored otherwise.
Would you say these are positives, Rick?
I think Russell did better with Lux, The Well, Pete McTighe, Lucky Day, and even parts of the Interstellar Song Contest. When he's just not trying to go huge spectacle and over the top, and he's just focusing on middle of the season episodes like Lux or The Well, I think he does much better.
So, we've got the Doctor Who series behind us. It ends on a contentious regeneration cliffhanger. What does the future hold for Doctor Who? What do you think, Gareth?
It does make sense that the ending was a bit sort of rushed and garbled and didn't quite hang together. So I don't know. It was so nearly brilliant, and the ending just didn't quite work, which is a shame. Having said that, I do hope we get more, and I think it would be a shame if this was the end of it for a bit. Although it's a really good cheeky ending too. I mean, Billy Piper, I'd seen the rumours, we talked about it, and I remember thinking it's quite savvy actually. I mean, I've no problem with that. So, and I think it might just be popular. And maybe this is a sign that it's being made more for a British audience.
Pretty positive. James Whittington?
The Doctor was never cool. He was always unique, and that's the format to which the show should return to. My hopes that the series rests, takes time out and lets fandom cool down a bit, and returns to its origins. Write out the ridiculous Timeless Child plot, bring back the history of the Time Lords, make Unit and Army once more, complete with top secret base, and stop using old foes and companions as tokens.
Yeah, all right. Philip, what do you think? Has Doctor Who got a future?
It does have one, obviously, with the CBeebies animation spin-off thing. The BBC wouldn't let that be the only Doctor Who representation on TV. So it does have a future, but I'm not sure it should do right now. As I think a lot of people think it would do better to go on hiatus. Right now it feels slightly embarrassing to be a Doctor Who fan, which is not a good place to be in. I was watching The Snowman yesterday, and that sparkles in all ways, in a way that the current run simply doesn't. The writing isn't good enough. The cinematography isn't good enough. There's no real magic to it, to Shooty's run, and that's a massive shame. As I say, he deserved better. I am hoping that whatever happens with Billy Piper is a flash in the pan thing. Maybe the toy maker mess with the Doctor's appearance, and she will shuffle off and be replaced with Ncuti Gatwa again. Why the heck not? I think if that were a fake regeneration and we go back to the 15th Doctor, I think it's hugely unlikely, but I would like that.
All right, James McClain, what do you think?
The next, what happens from here with Billy Piper, I'm at the moment fairly indifferent, we'll see. But aside from that, I thought the rest was excellent. It was fun, it was dynamic, it had lots of energy, a sense of positivity that fitted with the actor. It was a really good series. So we'll just see where it goes from here. But yeah, nice and diverse. Robot Revolution felt very Doctor Who Monthly comic strippy. The Well was excellent and dark. Yeah, I just thought it was all pretty good and a lot of fun. So we'll see what happens next.
Okay, Rick Lundeen.
Ending the series as he did with Ncuti regenerating into Billy Piper. I'm sorry, just more empty gimmicks, and I'm not buying it anymore. And that's all I have to say about it.
James Whittington.
Cast an actor who can do wacky, crazy shtick without over-egging the concept. Remember, the Doctor is an alien, an observer of all things, not a chameleon who can suddenly blend into the surroundings using the latest buzzwords accurately. The Doctor was never cool. He was always unique, and that's the format to which the show should return to.
Well, that has been quite an interesting experience. I'm very grateful to Gareth Kavanagh and to Philip Bates and to Rick Lundeen and to James Whittington, and I suppose to James McClain as well, to them for the time that they've taken into sending me these voice notes. It's really, really very kind of them. And I'd also like to thank Gareth and James and Rick for keeping them under 3 minutes. Philip managed to send me 6 minutes of material, which is quite amazing, really, given he said he didn't have time. Those of you in the UK may recall the late disc jockey radio presenter Steve Wright, and there was a period in his show where they would use syndicated interviews, and you would hear Steve asking questions to famous movie stars, and then you would hear them reply. But if you were paying attention, if you were listening carefully, you would notice there was a slight audio change between Steve Wright and the presenter, because they were using these syndicated interviews and giving the impression that Steve Wright was interviewing these people and he was not. And so it was kind of like an interview that wasn't really happening. I kind of feel like that's what just happened. I was interviewing people, but they weren't really there. Way back when, appropriately enough, on the early days of Kasterborous, we did a few round table discussions about series of Doctor Who that had just been on, and I think James Whittington was a participant in those. In those days, it would all be done, by email. I would send out an email with a few questions in, topics, point discussions, that sort of thing, and then the various people would email me back their thoughts, and I'm 90% certain that James Whittington was one of those people who was contributing to Kasterborous way back when. So it's really it's really pleasing to be able to have him back on, to have him involved again, even if it's just a podcast, nearly 20 years later. I hope this podcast has been interesting to you, and Doctor Who Series 15 is going to be one that we remember, possibly not for the right reasons. As my colleague James McClain regularly reminds us, you can have a bad beginning and a bad middle, but you can't have a bad ending. And Doctor Who season, whatever it is, 47, Series 15, does seem to have stumbled into having a bad ending, whether that's the BBC's fault, the Disney Plus's fault, the production team's fault, the lead actor deciding he wants to leave, whatever the cause for that is, it has hit a bit of a wall. So time will tell what happens next with Doctor Who. Thank you very much for listening. I'd love to hear what you think about this podcast, so let me know. Until next time, it's goodbye from me.